Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is Sao Paulo-born, U.S.-educated, European-groomed, Asia-tested, and now Lisbon-based Sylvia Cardim de Melo. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes, that's right.
That was a tongue twister there. And as you can imagine, Sylvia is also a fellow TCK, third cultural kid, and has embraced that fully in the work she does as the founder of Strawberry Brand Studio, crafting brands in Europe, U.S., and Asia. And so when I invited Sylvia to speak on Curito Connects, she wanted to share how being a woman, a mother, an entrepreneur is not an easy task and role to fulfill, and that she has had to learn along the way through the ups and downs how to find that work-life balance. So without further ado, Sylvia, I will invite you to introduce yourself a little bit. And I think where we can start is talking about your TCK experience, being Brazilian and then moving to the U.S., and then, doing your schooling there and then going back to Europe and then somehow ended up in Asia, and we can kind of go from there.
So thank you so much for having invited me. This is really exciting to be able to share a bit of my journey. So, as you mentioned, I was born in São Paulo. My parents are Brazilian, but family sort of takes us back to Hungary. Quite really funny story there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so apparently these Hungarian guys, when they moved to Brazil, they switched, I think when they were registered, they switched their last name because it was hard to pronounce, and so they switched their last name to Hungria, which means Hungary in Portuguese. In Brazil you can do all sorts of things when it comes to registration. And then actually the family every 4 years gets together and there's like a big celebration. So all the Hungrias in Brazil, they all come together every 4 years and they party. Yeah. So I was born in São Paulo, and then my father, who had, at the time he was working as a marketing director for American Express, got the opportunity to move to Miami. And he himself had grown up in Miami when he was like 10, 12, and then moved to LA. And so he knew that it was quite amazing to, as a child, have that opportunity to live in the U.S. His father was, I think my grandfather was a pilot for, I don't know, some Brazilian airline, I don't know. But so my father had this opportunity. He jumped on it. He's like, I want to give my kids what I was given when I was a child. And so we moved to Miami. And mind you, I mean, I didn't speak English at the time because when I was in São Paulo, I studied and I was raised within German, Portuguese background because my parents decided to put me in a Swiss German school because they thought, okay, if you go to a Swiss German school, you're gonna end up graduating speaking 4 languages fluently: Italian, French, German, English. Wow. I know, right? And I'm like, no pressure as a kid. And but English, by the time I had left when I was like 11 years old, I hadn't learned English yet because you were learning. So I was alphabetized in German and Portuguese. And then by the time I would have been 12, I would have learned French. And then when I was like 15, 16, I could have, I think, chosen English or Italian. But then I had already left to Miami. And so when my dad decided to enroll me in a school in Miami, I didn't really speak English. I had to learn, that third language. And then just, for shits and giggles, I don't know if I'm okay to say shit, but I decided to learn French and Spanish as well. So then all of a sudden it's a huge, my mom always says that Sylvia speaks 5 languages, but very poorly, because I mix and match all of them. But essentially when I moved to Miami, I had to learn English and I had to really sort of become accustomed to the culture there. And of course, Miami, a lot of people know it as a Latino community, but, I grew up in a very American also suburb. Really like residential lifestyle. And so it was just, really adapting to different cultures, different ways of doing things, socializing.
Was it hard for you?
It was, I think the fact that I didn't speak English was very difficult because it was very hard for me to stand up for myself. Now, I wasn't the kind of kid in Brazil where I would really like speak up all the time and I was, everybody knew me. No, but it was actually in Brazil, it was a very small, like I think my class was about 20 something of us. And this is not kindergarten. I'm saying like as a 12-year-old, 20 people is a very small class.
Yeah.
And so everybody knew everybody, and so you just felt comfortable. I never felt I was bullied or there was any bullying in school whatsoever. But then I come to Miami and I faced this bullying episode of someone throwing eggs and flour at me, and they knew that. I don't even remember. It was a group, I think, of 2 guys, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
I don't even remember their names, but essentially they knew that I couldn't fend for myself, and they made that episode that really just inked in my mind and really shaped who I become, because that really made me become a determined individual and really just driven to so then from there, from Miami, then I went on to study or completing my undergrad at USC in California, in LA, and then worked in Italy and Switzerland, and so always embracing new challenges, opening myself up to really just see the world. And then I also had the opportunity to go to Asia, live in Singapore for 4 years, and that's a completely different reality. Even though Singapore is not truly Asia, it does give you, I think, a little flavor of what Asia is about, and obviously becomes a place where you can then get to know different Asian cultures much better. And then now I'm back to Europe in Lisbon, very multicultural city. All of a sudden, I'm sure you found that as well. How much have you heard people speaking English and French? It's insane, right?
Oh, it's
German,
insane.
English.
We're currently sitting in Lisbon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We are, yes. Yeah, you've come here twice in the last 6 months.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think that is really interesting and very resilient of you to have done that in your path thus far, right? Like moving around and trying out different environments. What kept you curious and open-minded to, do that in terms of like, because sometimes people are comfortable being in the situation in the city they're in, but it sounds like you were always looking and curious and hungry for different experiences in different places. And it sounded like there's a lot of which, I mean, it goes in line with your work, right? But also just the curious mind, and what really inspired you to do that, because to be able to pick up yourself and move every few years, that's a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I would never forget. I remember when my father told my brother and I that we were moving to Miami. I remember I was like 10 or 11, and they called us up to their bedroom. And my dad said, I have news to share with you. We're going to be going to Miami. I don't even, I mean, as a 10-year-old, you're not even, I don't know, back in those days, you don't have social media, so you didn't really know what to expect. And I remember I cried because I was at a point in my life in Sao Paulo where I was just becoming really comfortable with my friendships, with school. It was just generally loving that experience, and then to be able to say, hey, that's gotta close and start fresh, it was really a challenge. And I remember my dad saying, I didn't put you through this private European education system for you to be comfortable and just stay at that. I've always envisioned, your mother and I always envisioned to raise you and your brother as global citizens, and that entails being able to face new realities and becoming comfortable with that. And so I think it was a lot my dad also guiding us and really sort of making sure that it's gonna be great. It's not something that you should be scared about. And so I think that helped a lot.
He was very forward thinking.
Yeah, always. I think from the beginning, because he himself saw that he had that opportunity when he lived in the U.S. from about 10-ish, I think it was 10 till he was 28. So it was quite a long time. And then, he moved to Brazil, and then he met my mom. And so I feel like he just knew what was happening. And that's the kind of thing that I kind of pass on to my child is, how can I today as a mother be able to prepare him to become a global citizen, right? And really bringing that thinking like from a toddler age, right? As opposed to just waiting until he decides whether he wants to move abroad or not,
Yeah. So I'm going to loop us back into our theme for today's conversation, which is about, being able to juggle the work-life balance as a female, as an entrepreneur, as a mother, a daughter, a sister, a wife. And for you, having kind of lived this very, beautiful, abundant, life of like travel and in different cultures and exposure, and were there, and it sounds like it was your father who actually really ignited that, love for curiosity and global citizen mindset. Were there other individuals who inspired you to kind of shape this career path that you've been on thus far, and at that transitional point where you left corporate and started your own company, Strawberry Brand Studio? If you can share with us a little bit about that part.
Absolutely. So I had the fortune to have met 3 really spectacular women from my time working for S.C. Johnson in Switzerland, so corporate, to being in Singapore. And the lady in Switzerland, she was working for S.C. Johnson as a marketing director. And she was probably the first woman that I remember meeting that was a wife, a woman, a mother, and a successful businesswoman, exactly. She was an entrepreneur, but she was really successful and very light. She was very light at the office, very respected for that business drive that she had. And so that was the first time that I met someone that really imprinted in me, like, this is what success as a woman, generally speaking, looks like. And that was really exciting. I would sleep over at her house a lot when my husband used to travel for work, and she had 2 small kids, and I would kind of have a little bit of a tasting of what that felt like, and I loved it. I was like always I loved everything about what she had constructed, that life that she had constructed for herself and for her family. So that for sure had dropped a little seed in my mind, thinking that's the kind of life that I want to build for myself. And then in Singapore, I met 2 women. One of them, entrepreneur on her own, like self-made woman. I mean, she took the business that she has today is family business, so she sort of took over and really put her stamp on it. 4 kids. I was really impressed by how she managed to, she was traveling all the time for work, and really, in terms of really putting you can tell, and because I think that's also something so important that I really like. I speak to a lot of people about it, where, when you become a mother, when you become an entrepreneur, not having to put everything else, sort of as last priority and just focusing on that. No, it's about finding that balance. But what I mean by balance is not forgetting all the other roles or the other facets that you have, because the moment that when you become a mother and you forget of who you are as a wife, or who you are as a woman, it's what kind of example are you giving to your child or to your spouse or to those around you. And so that woman that I met, I remember she was, she looked beautiful in every event that she would go to, but then she was like a badass at work. Like, it was really inspiring to see that, and then really loving as a mother. So it was interesting to see different facets of her across these different spectrums of her life. She would say that she was always like an octopus, I think, because she had all these different
like all her hands in different places.
And then the other woman, she I remember I met her when she was pregnant. She was just, I think, 3-4 months pregnant, and she had started her business. And then I just really followed her career and moved to Lisbon. And she was just like last year pregnant with her 3rd boy. Her kids are all under 5 or under 6. And I remember she was fundraising for her business. Like, it's a really big deal. And and I was thinking to myself, like, sometimes I feel like this is hard, but then it's like that person has it harder. Like, I can't imagine pregnant with your third child, fundraising, already with investors breathing down your neck. I mean, my business is a self-funded business. We're independent, which I absolutely love, not having to respond necessarily to investors, and like having to deliver certain KPIs, because that makes it, I think, much more like, or takes the pleasure away from the work.
Yeah.
But then for her, no, it's like she has all those expectations, and I'm like, damn, like my life's easy, man. Like, I can't complain. And so those women that I met along my life, I felt they have most, certainly shaped the kind of woman, mom, entrepreneur that I've become. And it's really about just looking around you and just seeing what can you take from those, women or those people, how are you inspired by them, but also recognize that this is not who I want to become, or, just looking at ways of, I want to make sure I don't go down this path, And so I just feel like curiosity has always been a huge driver, and I think has really shaped who I've become as an individual and as a professional, because if you're not curious by what else is out there and what can you learn from other people, then what can you do? It's I think curiosity really just pushes you outside your comfort zone. It really inspires you to just become a better version of yourself at all times.
I was curious to ask you this question when you were illustrating these three lovely ladies that you've encountered in your lifetime that have inspired you. They always say behind every successful man there is a like a supportive wife, etc. For every child, there's always like it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask this mindset we're in right now, right? About like, and for a while in the last 2 decades, the whole like, pushing the glass ceiling and women can have it all, behind the scenes, right? Would you say that, yes, to your point, exactly. Like, yeah, you try to balance and understand, like, don't forget who you are, so don't lose yourself in that process of, yes, you are a mother, you are a daughter, you are a sister, you're a wife, you're a CEO, you're a friend, you're an employer, you're a colleague, etc. But then how I just lost my train of thought.
No, but I know exactly
where you do?
I know exactly where I think where you're going.
I was kind of like, I have a punchline here.
No, I know exactly where you're going, because...
Okay, go for it.
Well, because one of the things that I tell people all the time is I think a lot of... The problem with society is a lot of women, they just set themselves up, like, that they need to meet these really high expectations. And then they don't meet them, and they get really frustrated. Exactly. Or burnt out. Mm-hmm. And the reality is stop believing that you can do it all. I think this idea of you can do it all, you can be superwoman, I find that to be BS, because what's the point? Like, why would you even think about being a superwoman? No, it's about living the moment. What can you do, or how do you make the most of every moment? How do you fulfill every moment with purpose, with soul, with love? And the reality is, you gotta set boundaries for yourself. You gotta be very selfish with your time and how you make the most of your time, because I can't do it all. And my team knows this, my husband knows this. Like, there are times where I just start crying, because that's the emotion that's within me. I don't need to put on like sort of poker face or just like pretend I'm someone who's strong and that doesn't have feelings. No, like, to the contrary. Like, if I'm getting to a point where I can't do it all, I will tell like people, like, I can't, like, I can't, help me, like,
ask for help,
absolutely, help me, what can I do? And or what can you, like, how do I go through this, and that's also the kind of thing, like, I was just talking to one of our designers, and I could tell she was getting a little bit frustrated because we need to deliver something to a client, and it was already like 5 p.m. And I was like, what can I do to help you? And because I think sometimes people are scared, they feel that it's too vulnerable for them to ask for help, and that's, people are going to look at them, they're going to frown upon them and be like, oh, that person's not strong. But resilience and strength doesn't have to mean like you have to put up this facade that you're impenetrable, or is that even a word, impenetrable?
It is today.
Yeah, impenetrable. That you are just superwoman, because I don't know. I believe people who live under that idea that you can be a superman or superwoman, they're just going to end up not being happy, essentially, because they're always having to fulfill an expectation that it's not necessarily letting them live wholeheartedly on a daily basis.
Do you find that in other women entrepreneurs who do have families and have kids, that there is this kind of conversation that happens where people might say like, oh, well, she has it easy because her in-laws are taking care of the kids, like in terms of I feel like sometimes that's a conversation that exists there, and it does feed into the mindset and the ego, and not in a healthy way, but I just kind of wanted to bring that conversation up and kind of hear your opinion on that as well, like in terms of, for you, like you have your husband who gets to work from home, right?
Well, if I had a nanny, I had like all these things, of course it would make it easier, but I feel like it goes back to being able to ask for help, in the sense that if you realize that things are getting way too overwhelming, is asking, or first of all starting with yourself, is what can I sort of peel back, like for instance, to give you just a very practical example. So my husband, he works from home. He's now working at Strawberry Barn Studio full time. It actually makes it a great headline for a newspaper article, is ex-financier, trades 18-year financial career to become a full-time staffer at Wise
company
startup. Exactly. So essentially, he works from home, and my child, he's a year old. We decided not to put him in crèche for various reasons, and so he takes care of my child. And so then the way that it goes is, on the weekends I kind of take care of the child, but there are weekends where I tell my husband that the week before was just so damn daunting on me that I needed to essentially let go of not, I mean, as much as I want to be with my child, I need to just relax.
You need me time.
And so I will tell my husband, I was like, baby, I really need you to step up this weekend because I can't. Now, I look at other friends of mine who have, 2 maids and 2 things. Would I love to have that help? Yes, but why would I even... And I think people should stop looking at of what they don't have and focus more on what do they have and how can they make that work, and make that dynamic work so that everybody's happy. I'm always very mindful of my immediate family. Is my husband happy? Is my child happy? I mean, the child is going to be happy regardless. I think that sometimes we think that we have to overly do things, but that the child is going to be happy as long as they see that the parents are happy. It's as simple as that. So, I think to those people that kind of frown upon others, but they have all the help, or they can do that because they have the in-laws or the babysitter. Stop worrying about what other people have and worry more about what do you have and how can you make that work.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good statement. So you said, the 3 women that you mentioned earlier, you've had, very intimate interactions with them. And I was curious in your interactions with them if you've ever had the opportunity to learn a little bit, like, from them, like, how do they balance? How do they find their me time, or what keeps them grounded? In many of my conversations on Curito Connects, we always talk about what keeps you grounded, and it varies for everybody. So I was just curious for your interaction with those ladies, but also for yourself, like what keeps you grounded in these times of like, oh my God, I feel so overwhelmed, like I need help, like I can't do it all, and being honest about it, right?
Yeah. I think one of the thing that I learned from these women is learning not to spread themselves too thin. So one of the women, the one that was that I met when she was already pregnant, she in her mind was always very set, was, I need, in order to balance the stress from work, I need to have fun and party.
Okay.
And so she would do that, very regularly, and you can tell that that worked really well for her. The other one was, for her, she would abdicate maybe going out, the one in Switzerland, going out for happy hours with colleagues because it was more important for her to come home, be with her kids so that she would not feel bad that she was missing out on her kids. And so she would come home, she would leave work at 6 p.m., come, be with her kids, and then the weekends she would do a lot of things at home. So she would invite, like, let's say me or other friends for barbecue at home. And so that way she could be with her kids and sort of like integrate the social aspect as well. So I think what I realized from them is not keeping yourself, like, again, trying to be at all places at all times, because that's not manageable, is really being able to period or sort of go back to your foundation and asking what will help me keep my sanity.
Yeah.
And for me right now is and it's funny because every place where I've lived in my life, I've really taken on something. So for instance, when I was in Switzerland, I actually rested a lot. I was coming on the back of having been having studied and done a study abroad in Milan. Before that I was in LA and then obviously Miami, and so I come to Switzerland and this is about resting. It's about really like the art of not doing anything. And that was amazing. But then obviously after 4 years, that got a little bit boring until when we had the opportunity to go to Singapore, it was the complete opposite, right? And so I feel like right now, and I'm so blessed that I've become a mother and, the business is flourishing in the area of post-COVID, because it made me realize the importance of, or the luxury of time and being able to define what does it make sense for me to spend my time. And then whenever I do something, I'm there. I'm in that moment. So if I'm going to go for happy hour with you, I'm going to be present with you. Yeah. I'm not going to be, because I do happy hours every day, and so I'm going to be somewhere else. No. Like, I'm going to cut back on quantity, but then really invest in the quality of those moments, whether they are with my kids, with my friends, with myself, like getting a massage, like I will disconnect. And so if I'm focusing on that moment and really making the most of that moment, that's how I keep myself grounded, because I've obviously been, my dad had, he passed away 12 years ago, and it was very spontaneous. It was a heart attack, and I think it just really like swept me off my feet, like in realizing that my foundation was gone. And so that made me realize that it's so important to be able to be living in the present moment and really making the most of every interaction in the present moment. It's important, obviously, to think and visualize and having these ambitions. I think that gives you direction. Yeah. But being grounded to present moment and making the most of that, that's what makes it purposeful and soulful.
Yeah, I like that. I had a similar, when you mentioned your dad, because I think our dads passed away the same year. Yeah. In 09.
Yeah, 09, yeah.
09,
oh, no, wait, was it 08 or 09?
Like 08, 09. Well,
my dad passed away in, was it 08? No, 09. Yeah. February 09.
Yeah, so my dad passed away July 09.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I think what you said just then really reminded me of that feeling too, where I was like, oh, he worked so hard, and just like that, like no money could save him. Exactly. And carpe diem, right? Like it's just really, and and then I went through this whole phase where I was just like, nothing really mattered, like this doesn't like this doesn't make sense, like why are we, it's like you should do things you like to do, like why are you putting yourself in situations that you don't want to be in? It was a very confusing time, but I want to come back to the conversation to ask you how you then, we kind of brushed upon this earlier, but in terms of your career path and then how you decided to start Strawberry Brand, if you could share with us about that.
So, and I think that has to do with this experience of my father, because when I was working in Singapore, I had a local Singapore contract, which gave me 14 days of vacation. Having, living in Singapore with my husband's family in Portugal, my family was spread between Brazil and Miami. So imagine those 15 days.
It's not enough.
It was just to visit family, essentially, not even to go and explore the world. And I wanted to, with a laptop and with Wi-Fi connection, you could essentially, as a brand strategist, I was working as a brand strategist at an agency at the time in Singapore. And I felt, why can't I just work abroad? Because I want to be with my family. I want to, do all these things. And I just feel like work is taking that away from me. And so when I moved to Portugal with my husband and we decided to, start the company, I've always, from the get-go, even before the pandemic, I was always very open with the team and saying, guys, like, if you want to, let's say, travel to South Africa, and the flights are cheaper to go Wednesday and come back Tuesday, but you don't want to really take Thursday and Friday off, and you don't want to take Thursday and Monday off, and you want to work those days, you can work there. Why not? Like, why can't you work there? And so for me, it was always, as an agency, do things or give my team things that I didn't have as an employee, and to really make them look at this not as a job that they have to do, but that they enjoy doing, that they actually have this genuine connection with what they're doing that makes them feel proud, and gives them a sense of purpose. That a lot of people nowadays are talking about purpose, and they feel like, purpose, you have to start your own business to have purpose. I don't think that it's necessary. I think you can have purpose working at a company that has a very clear purpose and a very clear direction where it's going. And so if I can give my team things that I didn't have in my previous jobs as an employee, then I feel like I'm doing my job, because I'm helping them see that they don't need to choose between life and work. They can mix both. And it's not like I expect them to. And this thing about work-life balance, for me, it's about how can you make those both work in symphony, where you don't feel like you need to abdicate one to have the other. And it's just finding that it's more than balance. It's more like it's a harmonious interaction between the two elements. And so when I started Strawberry, it was not even before, like, what is our point of view when it comes to design, whatnot. Before even that, it was just thinking about what is how do we want to build this agency? What is our ethos? What do we stand for? And the reality is, everybody that has come to work for Strawberry Brand Studio, they all feel that and they connect with that. And it's interesting to look at, and I hope for them, when they leave Strawberry and they go work in other places, that they are able to influence other places to have that sort of mentality and approach. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Now I kind of want to work for Strawberry. I'm thinking some people listening to this might be like, oh yeah, let me look into this agency. What is this? And it's exciting because you're going to expand to the U.S. too. You're going to open an office there, right?
Yeah, I'm going on Fridays, Friday to in a couple of days to Miami. We've had, obviously the pleasure of having had other U.S.-based clients before. But what we felt was, and actually that came about in March when we met someone who became essentially, or who will become our MD now. We've actually taken her from her marketing director job in a big multinational, because she didn't feel like that did it for her. She wanted to work for a place that had more purpose and more soul. And she was the one who was telling us, like, you guys do an amazing job, like, and you're charging so little, like, you have room to really make charge little. It's not like we charge peanuts, but we have our value, but it's in the context versus, the competition. She was saying that the quality of the work, the value that we're delivering is really top notch. And she opened us up to thinking about setting up an office there. And then conversation kind of evolved, and we realized that she wanted to become, and it's for her, it was something that she really looked forward to becoming part of this project, of really opening the office in Miami. And we're like, okay, let's make this, how can we make this work? And we did. And so it's very exciting. We have already a couple meetings lined up, but it's exciting because, obviously you have a direct flight to Lisbon to Miami. So it's just,
which I just learned today.
Across the pond. And it's just easy. I think with the pandemic, working remotely, and so it's just easy to be, back and forth. So it's exciting to be opening stateside.
And then eventually in Asia. And so I have a few more questions before we wrap up, because I think we are coming up with time. Okay, I'm gonna just throw them out. You can answer it in however way you want. So one is, where do you see Strawberry Brands in 10 years? So I usually like to ask my guests towards the end, kind of like what resources would you recommend that has helped you over the years with some clarity, and it could be like a book you've read, it could be like a talk you listened to, it could be an individual, that really inspired you, or it could be like an activity. So that's the second question. And the third one, I think this is quite fitting for you in this conversation today, is what do you want to leave our listeners with today?
Okay, so I just jotted down here so I don't forget. So
your vision for the 10 years,
yes.
Like the next 10 years for Strawberry. Resources. And then the last one is, what do you want to leave our listeners with today?
Okay. So how do I see Strawberry 10 years from now? I never envisioned let me put it this way. I've always envisioned staying boutique. Boutique in the sense of, one of the things that I pride a lot on what we've been able to build is the relationships that we were able to build, for lack of better words, with our clients.
Yeah.
And, even like just 2 days ago, unfortunately, one of our clients' mother passed away, and she informed me on a Saturday. I was like, that's so sweet. Like, she informed the agency, like it's
turned into a friendship.
Exactly. Turned into a friendship, and it's into a relationship that's not work-based relationship. It's much more than that. And so I've always envisioned staying boutique, eventually having offices in many places, because I do feel for the team having the opportunity to move from one office to another might be quite interesting. I don't envision being more than like 30, 40 employees, because I want to always be able to have that direct contact with everyone in the team and really build relationships with each and everyone. And so if you grow to be too big, it's fairly difficult. But I think most importantly, aside from size, etc., is I want, it's not about Strawberry per se, but it's how can Strawberry become even a better agency that crafts meaningful, purpose-led brands, because I feel like we're just overwhelmed with so much clutter, and I see a lot of brands starting and closing in a year's time, and it's very frustrating, because I know a lot of people put a lot of effort, but are they putting it in the right way? Are they really thinking about what is a fundamental human tension or truth that you're addressing as a brand? It's how are you meaningful to someone's life? And a lot of people don't ask themselves those questions when they're building brands.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, they realize that they're not going places, and it's because they haven't really connected with their audience.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's sort of my vision looking forward. In terms of resources, I feel like there's 2 books that really impacted me: The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Mark Mason, right?
Huh?
Is it Mark Mason? Is that right?
Is it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And then
the orange book.
Yes, exactly. And I was just Googling because I wanted to get the name right, but it's a very old book that my father and then my husband gave to me. It's how to make friends and influence people. I think that's right. I think how to make friends and influence people. Exactly.
Yep.
It's a very by Dale Carnegie. Exactly. Yeah. Very old book, but it's just everything that you do in life. It's about relationships and being able to, if you want to get your point across, you want to get something your way. It's how do you deliver that? So it's not what you say, but how do you deliver that, and what is that relationship that you build with someone that lends you to the point where you can deliver whatever you want,
right.
And get that person engaged with that. So this book has always been
a go-to.
Exactly. And then something to leave behind the audience. I think if there's something that I always that I've always told people, it's be selfish. Like, if you don't like something, or if you don't like something that's happening, or if you're not happy, like, just be selfish and like, what will make me happy? And it's so simple as, my husband, if he wants to go to a particular restaurant on a Friday night, for him, it's just another night. But for me, it's a momentous Friday night, because I'm just coming off of a big presentation. So I want to go to a place that's just going to impact me. If he's going to take me to like a little sort of corner thing, like, I'm not even going to go there, because my time, it matters. And it matters, and it's not that his doesn't, but it's just, for me, that those 2-3 hours is going to be more important than it will be to him.
Yeah.
And so I make myself very clear to him, saying, can we actually go to somewhere that's a little bit more celebratory, because I had a big night, a big presentation, and I just feel like I deserve to be in a place that's just going to be a little bit more like a pat in the back kind of.
Yeah, like celebrated.
Exactly. And so being selfish in those occasions and really communicating, because if you just let everyone get their way, it's going to get to a point where you're just going to be like, who am I? And like, am I happy? And you're going to get into that spiral of just questioning and just not happy. And so I feel like if you're selfish, of course you can be selfish all the time, but really picking those moments where it makes sense for you to be selfish, then do it, because you should be happy first and foremost. And if you're happy, everyone around you is happy.
I love that as our ending. Thank you so much for your time. I will put all the resources, like all the links to find you on LinkedIn and your website and Instagram, so people can reach out if they are interested in working with Strawberry Brand Studios, because they can be anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.